I want you in the cloud.
Yes, recording. There we go.
There we go. How'd you know? Oh, it says it there?
It says recording.
Okay, I'm a little behind, but I'm trying.
Better late than never.
Catch up.
It's fine.
So, hello and welcome to On the Couch, where we're going to have conversations about anything happening in this community and in this industry. Today's guest is Amber Iman. Now, Amber was born here in Atlanta, bred here in Atlanta, went off to Washington, D.C. to go to school in Howard. And yeah, and came back for about a year, maybe?
Three.
Was it 3 years? Oh my gosh. Went 3 years and then went off to New York and, as they said, made it big. So, yeah. Oh, come on. How many people get a chance to come from Atlanta and go and be? One of the first things you did was a Broadway show, right?
A year and a half after I moved, I made my Broadway debut. Yeah, I did 2 shows off Broadway and then Broadway. Yeah.
Right. So you did Rent off Broadway.
Rent. I did another show called The Civil War Christmas. So that was like Christmassy time. And then that following year, I started on that Broadway show like May, June-ish. So yeah, okay. From January of 2012 to June of 2013 is from off-Broadway to Broadway, I guess.
Wow. And your first Broadway show was your Nina Simone piece, right?
Yeah, Soul Doctor. I played Nina Simone. That was my first Broadway show. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the first gig when I moved to New York was actually singing background for Lauryn Hill in Europe. It's like I moved to New York and like March, I was on my way to Europe, which was great. That sometimes it's a detour. Sometimes you gotta go left and go right.
There you go. And probably the connections. I'm sure you made lots of connections.
I made money. I had never traveled like that. I had never done like the tour bus life, which was so cool. The arenas, and when you're traveling with an artist, you get the best of everything. So it was, such a great opportunity. I can say that I toured with a major recording artist singing background in Europe. We would do like a different city every day or so. So it was like Amsterdam, then we were in Switzerland, then we were in France, then we were in Italy. It was insane. But
you didn't get a chance to really see the cities then.
We would get like one day to see as much as we could. A lot of food, a lot of eating, a lot of sightseeing. And I think at the time, like Anthony Hamilton was on tour at that same time in Europe. So we would like go to his concert or hang out with his people who would tell us where to go. It was so cool. I'd love doing stuff like that. Just things that seem random. And it's like, no, this is like life and experience. And
would you do it again?
I totally would. I feel like you learn more from doing different types of things. Like it forces different parts of your brain to be activated. Like I had 4 days to learn 33 songs for Lauryn.
Oh my
And
gosh.
There's no teleprompter. Like I had to know the songs and the words for 33 songs before we left to go to Europe. So what it made my brain do, and having to blend with 2 other artists, having to check in with Lauryn at all times. How many times she gonna sing this hook? She gonna go back to the first verse? There's choreography. It's like boot camp for your brain. So I love stepping away and doing things that may not seem like on brand for where I am in my career, but it's like, it's on brand for who I am as a person and what I need in my spirit.
Well, that's really interesting to me that the first thing you did when you went there was do singing, because I met you when you were young, but I think the first time you were 8 when you came to Atlanta Street Theater where I was teaching. Is that right? 7?
Probably. I was young in Atlanta Street Theater.
Yes, and we weren't taking people until they were 10, but somehow you got in. I don't know. We must have seen that light shining.
I was VIP.
Yes, you were. And but I don't remember you singing. And I never knew that you could sing until years later, after you had gone to college and you came back, and I heard you singing. You auditioned for a show that I was directing at the Aurora Theater, Once on This Island, and I was blown away. I was like, my little girl sings. I know you weren't a little girl then, but my baby girl sings. Oh my gosh. And what a beautiful voice. When did you start singing?
I think I always did. I just wasn't like, I'm gonna be a singer. So I guess people were confused, which makes sense. I mean, I always sang in the choir. I was in Atlanta Public School honor chorus where they taught us to like sing arias and read sheet music. I did musicals in high school. I was always singing, but I've just never, it's never been in my spirit to be like, look at me. I don't know. I find more value in like doing the work part of it. I've never been like that. And I have so many friends who were like, you gonna see my name in lights, and they would have all these fancy posters. And that was never my vibe. So I think people have always been like, you sing or didn't know it. And I was like, I've always been singing, but I'm just not loud about it. So rightfully so, you were confused. Because even when I wanted to go to Howard for theater, but I had a full ride, and it was like, well, if this costs the same, $0 to do 3 things instead of 1, I'll do musical theater. But I never was like, yes, I'm gonna move to Broadway and be. That was not it. I don't know how my brain works. I can't explain it.
As long as it's working, that's okay.
Yeah.
Now I want to ask you a little bit about your European tour with the climate of Black Lives Matters and all of the uh, police brutality and the murders and stuff that are going on here. How was being a Black woman in Europe as opposed to being a Black woman here in the States?
You know, I remember. Here's the thing. I was a Black woman in Europe attached to a major recording star who whenever we walked into any city, they had never probably seen that many Black people together at one time. Because it's the band, it's the artist, it's everybody. And they naturally always thought we were Beyonce. Like, people were always.
Of course.
Of course, I'm Beyonce. I am Beyonce. And no matter where we went, people were staring. They wanted pictures. It was like they didn't know who we were, but they knew we were somebody. So they would automatically ask for pictures and autographs. And I mean, we're staying at the finest of hotels. We're getting the finest of transportation. So I didn't even remember that I was Black, if that makes any sense. It was just like, we are being taken care of. We are being treated well. Everyone thinks we're fabulous. I had no worries or concerns. It didn't even cross my mind now that I think about it, because we were just living the high life. It was great compared to America, where everything is trash.
Well, yeah. Yeah. So speaking of which, I know that you are also an activist. You're a writer, an actor, a singer, a dancer, the producer, and activist. So what is your take on things that are going on right now?
You know, I'm so exhausted, Brenda Porter. I really am tired. It's what I see in the Broadway industry right now is that we're healing a lot of different things at one time. Like, I can only speak to New York. I'm sure this applies to Atlanta, but like, there's never really been a real sense of community in the wholeness. There's pockets of community, but like a community where everyone communicates with each other and speaks up and speaks out and really taking a moment to like look you in the eye and have a conversation with you. That doesn't happen often. So when the world shut down and then George Floyd, now we have communities trying to fix 12 things at one time. We're trying to fix racism, communication, community, trust, money, all at one time. So it's just like, I've been so exhausted, but also excited and liberated and encouraged because we needed this. Like, as unfortunate as it is, and as unfortunate, one of my good friends, Nick Cordero, passed away yesterday. He had COVID and was in the hospital for 91 days.
Yeah, I read about that.
The world had to stop for us to start talking to each other. It's so unfortunate, but I'm excited about knowing that we will not go back or come out the way that we came into this. Like, we have to have conversations. Things have to change. Things have to be addressed. We have to break down infrastructures and rebuild. We have to start looking at things from the top down, who's in charge, who's in control, who's running things, from industry to police officers to president, all of it. It's time for a restructuring and a rebuilding. And I think we would not have gotten here without this pandemic. So it's a lot of terrible stuff that's been bubbling all this time. You know what I'm saying? Like, people have been unhappy and in survival mode and hiding. And hurting for a long time. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, we would have just kept going like that.
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
I think so. I said to someone just the other day that, if the pandemic not been here, we would have gotten upset about the murders that are happening. We would have protested for the weekend, and Monday we would have gone, oh girl, I got to get back to work. I can't do this anymore, and we would have gone on. But the
And
pandemic allowed people to go, I don't have to go to work tomorrow, so I'm gonna keep here and keep protesting, and I'm gonna make somebody say something.
yes,
You know.
and I think that's why you see so many organizations popping up and so many conversations happening, because we want to make sure that once we go back to work, that we don't do that, that we
Right.
remember this and we carry this with us and we vow to make changes that are going to stick. Because I mean, I think that's why you see so much happening right now. It's like at rapid speed because people are like, I don't want Broadway to open back up, regional theaters to open back up, and people just are like, well, now I got money and now I got a production contract and everything's fine. We have to sit in this for a little bit. And we have to be uncomfortable and we have to be a little unhappy. We have to be a little stressed and a little pissed because necessary change is going to come out of this. It has to. Its time is up. We tired.
We are, and everybody's tired. I teach a group of senior citizens theater, and I weighed in with them the first week or so that we were doing, when the some of the protests started, and I wanted to write a statement from Impact Theater, and a couple of my seniors, I checked in with them, and they were like, "I'm just tired. I'm tired of all this. I've been doing this for 80 years of my life, and I'm tired."
Yep.
It's the same thing that happened in the 60s. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. So there we go with that.
Yeah,
Uh,
because for a lot of us, we've been doing this and living this. It's like white people are brand new to this, some of them. And
right,
so we're like, we've been fighting this fight since we came out the womb. welcome,
exactly.
welcome to where we've been for.
But I'm glad that we're calling them to their actions in a way that we never have before. I've
Yeah,
sat on several phone conversations, and I think the pandemic has also helped with that, because face to face, being able to say this is not right what you're doing is a little harder than when you have 30, 40 people on a call, and people are saying, what can we do? And we say, well, let's first tell you what you did, and now what you can do so that doesn't happen.
it's accountability.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people and organizations have been in the dark because stuff would happen and we would take it and we would bury it and we would keep moving because we were surviving. So a lot of people feel like they're being ambushed, but it's like, yeah, no, we never told you about it, but it was happening. So now they're having to sit down, listen, know that this happened at your institution, at your organization, at your theater, under your tenure. Yes, it did. Multiple times from multiple sources, from a lot of your friends. And now they're having to come to grips with, okay, now what do we do to move forward? And people are empowered because there's strength in numbers. And I see people who are saying, you know what, until that changes, I won't work for your theater. And we know that change happens when you start messing with people's money. So I'm excited because it feels like something good is going to come out of this. And I'm excited about seeing Black people coming together and deciding, well, let's build our own, because we always should have had it. And there have been different theaters that were Black owned that maybe don't exist anymore and have fallen away. So I see people being reinvigorated to like pool resources and let's just have a play reading day and let's just do a festival. Let's build a complex. There's so many things that are going to be born out of this pandemic. So I'm just excited.
Well, it's really interesting too, because I think I am the only Black-owned theater company that has a female um, at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
That's a theater company. Not There are lots of people that produce,
Yes.
and like Tony Henson does a wonderful job with the Black Theater Festival, and there's other people that produce. But in terms of having a season and a continuous thing, even though I'm fiscally sponsored, I believe that Impact Theater is the only. And yet I tell you that our people have not come out to audition for me. And it's true, I don't pay, what some of the big boys pay. I will say that. But if I were able to get some of our talented people in, then I'd get more butts in those seats, and I'd be able to get more funding. I'd be able to get a lot more. And so it's not only calling white organizations out, but it's also supporting Black organizations and what we do.
We're having the same talks in New York, because it's like there's Classical Theater of Harlem, there's National Black Theater, and how many of y'all go support? How many of y'all go to Harlem and see shows there? How many of us turn our noses up and are like, well, it's not Times Square, it's not Broadway, and it's like, and you're part of the problem, brother and sister. So I love that it's a calling out and a calling in. Yeah, call out Black people, call in Black people, and be like, y'all, okay, we need to have a conversation amongst ourselves, because it's also, we don't want them to see that there's, dissension amongst us. So, but we need to come. At the same time, we need to have these conversations, and we need to come together and be like, okay, we have to have a conversation, and there has to be a moment of, let's admit, yes, we haven't supported Brenda Porter. No, we haven't shown up in audition for whatever reason. How can we change this moving forward? There has to be that. I had to think about myself. Like, I know, now I have done my part in New York. When I wrote my film, I had it screened at National Black Theater in Harlem. I was like, let me be the change I want to see. Because I was like, I shot it in Harlem. Why do I want to go to Soho? Why do I want to go to Times Square to have a viewing? I'm Black, I live uptown. Let me have my viewing uptown. So it's trying to bring business uptown. I have seen a million shows there. I go support Classical Theater of Harlem. And this is not about you, but there's also something, as me as an artist and other Black artists, we're like, okay, Black people, sometimes we be a little lazy and our stuff don't be right. So let's come together and work together to make it better. Because that's the thing. I know for a fact that a lot of time we don't support our own, because sometimes we don't always be right. And it's like, you can't say that because you don't want to be offensive, but we need to have that conversation, because together we can make things better. We can work on the marketing. We can work on the types of shows that are being chosen, because what I see a lot of time in certain organizations is that it's a family thing, and there's not a lot of young blood there. So sometimes things are like, people don't support because it's not a show that they want to see, or they're my demographic. Like, you might, and this is not about you, this is literally about just Black people in theater. It's like, that's not a show I want to see. Or why did y'all pick this? Or it's all the shows is from 1962. So it's like, but if you have young Black people and older Black people and all different colored Black people come together in a room and have this conversation, now we know, okay, maybe we should choose this show. Maybe we can have a play festival. Maybe we can find a way to incorporate the younger demographic. But it all comes from communication. It all comes from community building. So that's what I'm most excited about now, is that we're having these conversations.
Yes. Yes, we are. Thank goodness. Now, you mentioned your film. So yes. I am so, so proud of you. My home girl. My home baby girl. So you wrote, produced, directed, and co-directed.
Started, because it's a film and it was my first time, I knew that I didn't have the eye to direct it fully by myself. I don't know all about coverage and shots, but there were certain things directorially that I knew how I wanted to look and feel. So I say I assisted the director, I co-directed, but I won't give myself that full title at all.
and this film has gotten awards and been all over. So tell me about it. Tell me about.
I did Hamilton on the road for a year, and we were in California for 10 of those months, I believe. And just living in California and life being lovely. And then I came back to New York after 14 months on the road, and there was a mouse in my apartment. And it just like, I haven't seen a fly, I haven't seen a mosquito, I haven't seen anything. And like 2 weeks back, a whole mouse. And it took a toll on me, like physically, mentally, emotionally, all these things, because I'm thinking the reason I have a mouse is because I'm single, and God is punishing me for being single. single, I would have a man, and my man would be here to kill the mouse. So God is punishing me for being single and successful. So as you see, it's a domino effect. Like it really. And I was like a grown 30-year-old woman in my home, like walking around in snow boots in April. I was wearing snow boots because when I originally saw him, he jumped, and I called him a him, and I named him Steve. He could have been a woman. To this day, I don't know what it was. But when I saw him, he jumped out of this cabinet onto my foot. So I felt his tiny toes on my toes. So I was like, I'm wearing snow boots in my house. I would come in, put my bag down, put on my snow boots. And I lived in snow boots in my apartment for 2 weeks. And like, I saw him in the kitchen. So I did not go back into my kitchen for like 10 days. And like, there were pots on the stove with food in them. They got molded. I didn't care. I had plants hanging in the kitchen. I didn't water them. They died. I didn't care. So there was a point when I was like, this is ridiculous. And it got to the point where I was like, this is a film or something, because I can't believe that I am this ridiculous about a mouse. And then it died. Like, I woke up one morning, he was dead in the middle of my living room. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So I kind of held on to that idea. And I had always wanted to get into short filmmaking, but I knew nothing about films. So I had a friend who I went to Howard with, and he works in film like all day, every day. That's his job. And I was like, I have an idea, and I just want you to give me like 3 mistakes that rookie filmmakers make in their life. That's all I wanted. I was like, let's have lunch. And we come to lunch, and I tell him my idea. And he's like, so we're producing this. And I was like, you're not listening. That's not what I asked you for. He was like, no, there's a resurgence right now of like Black women who have a point of view, know the story they want to tell, and they just need somebody standing behind them, you know, making all the pieces of the puzzle move. And I was like, okay, but still not really knowing that this is a thing. So he's like, okay, you need to write a treatment. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I went home, I wrote a treatment. He's like, now you need to write it as a screenplay. I was like, I know what that is, but I don't know how to do that. So he was like, you need this software. It's called Final Draft. I Googled Final Draft. It was $200. I said, I won't be doing that. Somehow somebody sent me a link for free Final Draft. And I was like, okay, maybe that's God telling me. Okay.
Wow.
So I just remember like I had Final Draft open. I had my treatment. I had all his notes. And then I had YouTube, how to use Final Draft. And for like 2 weeks, I just went back and forth between all 4, just trying to figure out how to write a screenplay. This is the first thing I've ever written. And I sent it to him, and he's like, this shit is good. And I was like, still not really thinking this is a thing. And then he's like, so I got to work on the budget and how many thousands. And I'm like, what? I took Hamilton with the intentions of like, I want to save enough money to finally be able to invest in myself, like to say no to things I don't want to do so I can do the things I want to. So this was a part of that plan, but still very scary to like put money and like energy and then like hire a crew of like 20 people off a foolish story about a mouse. Like it just, my brain had a hard time wrapping itself around the idea. But I wrote it in April, we shot it in November, and I saw like the first cut of it in December, and my mind was blown. Like I couldn't believe that I had done this thing. And then I was like, okay, great. Like that was the end of the experiment for me. I wanted to see if I could write, and I wanted to see if my humor translated to the film. And it did. And I was like, great, thank you so much. Okay, everyone. And he was like, so now film festivals. I was like, I didn't ask you for this. You're not listening. And he was like, you just spent a lot of money. You don't want to see what you could possibly get out of it. And I was like, okay. And we submitted to 75 film festivals,
Wow.
which all have a price from like $0 to $500. So more money invested. But he took that upon himself. He paid all the submission fees. So far, I mean, COVID slowed things down, but of the 75 festivals, we've gotten into 15 so far, and we've won Best Comedy, Best Short, Best Actress multiple times.
Girl, I'm so proud of you.
I'm still confused.
All because of Steve the Mouse. Oh, and the name of the piece is Steve.
Steve. Mm-hmm.
Steve the Mouse. Well, you know, I definitely feel you because I do not do the rodent thing. So In fact, I'm not sure I wouldn't have just moved in with a friend someplace for a while.
I tried. I really, 'cause you feel like you've been personally violated. Like it feels like you've been robbed. It feels like you've been attacked. The gall, the nerve, the audacity for you to be in my home and then die in my living room. Who does that? How rude.
See, I probably would have invested in a cat at that point.
See, I thought about that too. But then cats are weird, so I didn't know what to do.
Well, I got you.
I want a puppy. I want something I can hold and cuddle. And cats don't like you. They just be like, "Meow." So I was like, okay. But I had friends like, you want to come borrow my cat? And I was like, I don't want to have just a strange cat in my house.
I would have taken them up on that so fast.
I know. I should have done
Strange
that.
cat in my house for 2 weeks and then goodbye.
You're right. You're right.
But
Oh,
you know,
God.
to each their own. To
True.
each their own. So, what are you working on now? Because I know that you had a podcast. Do you still have a podcast?
So that was, there's a digital platform called Broadway Black by Andrew Shade, and it was his podcast. I was just a co-host. So I had signed up for, yes, let's do a year. And then I got Hamilton and was gone for 14 months. And then I came back, and I was at a point in my life where before COVID, I was about to go do a show out of the city. So it just became not feasible for my life because I'm never in New York for longer than 2 minutes. So I stepped down so that other co-hosts could join. So the podcast is still happening. I'm just not a co-host anymore.
Okay, but you were, you have other organizations that you were part of or are part of. Tell me about those.
I co-founded Broadway Advocacy Coalition back in 2016, 2017. And then there's a new digital platform that I created with two friends called Black Women of Broadway.
So tell me about the coalition first.
The coalition, 2016, I was on Broadway doing Shuffle Along. And I remember being at the theater and hearing that like a busload of Broadway actors were going down to Florida like the day after the Pulse nightclub shooting had happened. And I was so proud. I was like, thank God Broadway is doing something. And you know how you're in a show, you miss so many events. And I was like, oh, I've probably missed all of the Broadway for Black Lives Matter events. So I Googled and found nothing. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And I put out a Facebook post, not meaning to do anything, just meaning to like poke the bear and hide the stick. I was like, there's Broadway for Trader Joe's, there's Broadway for Shark Week, there's Broadway for Britney Spears. When is there Broadway for Black Lives Matter? And I just walked away, came back 2 hours later, and the post had like 2,000 likes. There were 100 comments. My texts were blowing up. And I was like, oh, crap, I have started something. And people were like, Amber, if it's anybody who's going to do something, it's going to be you. And I was like, I'm not doing anything. There's a theme in my life of people not listening to me. And then things get created. And so a group of artists, we came together, and in 12 days, we planned Broadway for Black Lives Matter. 1,200 people showed up. It was a night of music and dance and spoken word, but also we brought in NYPD officers and community activists and policy reformers, because I was like, so many people are angry. We don't know what we're angry about, really. We don't know our rights. We don't know how to be good citizens. So I want more than singing. I want education. Like, what can we do when we leave here? How can we start building better community? So the event was a success. And then I was like, thank you so much, I'm done. Just like after Steve, thank you so much, I'm done. And then people were like, what's next? And I was like, no one's listening.
Perhaps it's you not listening to God.
Shut up, Brenda Porter. I didn't ask you that.
Okay.
Okay. We took a week to sit down and eat some fries and rejuvenate. And then we went back to the drawing board like, okay, there's a need in the community. And we became Broadway Advocacy Coalition. And our original mission was, to bridge the gap between activism and artistry. And now it's extended more into giving students and artists and organizations and institutions the tools to use art in their social justice work and in their advocacy. So we have done work all over New York. We've run the gamut. All the stuff that we've done, like a couple months ago, we had a course at Columbia Law School where we bought lawyers and artists in the same room with formerly incarcerated men to start having a conversation about how do we start dismantling the system. Like, they created pieces of art that they performed for each other. You know, an actor and a man who went to jail for 20 years for who knows what, but he's now out and trying to better serve his community. And we just realized that at the root of all of the problems is communication. It's people just not talking to each other. So what we provide a lot of times is just space for people to come together and talk and create and listen and collaborate. So we've been in operation for about 4 years, and we just produced last month a 3-day forum called Broadway for Black Lives Matter again, talking about racism in the industry. And it was 3 days. The first day was a day of healing for Black artists only. And then the second day was we allowed white people to come into the room, but just to listen. We're going to tell you what we've been putting up with, sharing our stories. And it was from, you know, artists who are just starting out to Tony Award winning folks. Because people a lot of times think, oh, the racism and the stuff is just when you're young. And it's just, you know, when you're not rich or famous. And it's like, no, it's everybody. And then on the third day, we talked about accountability. Like, you've heard, you've listened, you've processed. How can we move forward? How can you hold yourself accountable? Giving tools and resources and anti-racism things and books to read and pledges to sign. So 4 years later, here we are, still kicking. And that forum really kind of ignited something in the industry. And we just see people really starting to have conversations and really working towards being accountable, holding themselves accountable, holding each other accountable, doing the work. So, yeah.
Wow, that is a lot and a lot of responsibility. But I hear
Yes,
I hear you saying that you gave them resources and such. And I've heard so many. I've sat in on so many meetings where people are saying they're tired of teaching, of giving resources, of that the problem was created by white people, so white people need to solve the problem. And I have said several times that they don't know that there is a problem.
And they don't know how to fix it. We can't trust even 20 white people in a room and saying fix it. They didn't know it was a problem. How are they gonna fix it? So something that Ruben Santiago Hudson said to me that I've been just carrying with me is that, yes, we have to work to help white people fix their stuff, because no matter who you are or where you are, you deserve to be able to work in a space that is equitable, that is safe, that you feel not oppressed, that you don't feel stifled, that you don't feel, that you just feel like you have a right to just come to work and do your job. Everybody deserves that. So as Black people, because we're kind and wonderful human beings, we're gonna help you fix your stuff. But then we have a responsibility to work twice as hard to work on our own. And that's the other side of it. It's not just let's help white people, it's yes, we need to, because people of all race, shapes, sizes, and colors deserve to be able to work in an equitable space. But then as Black people, we just do need to come together and build our own, because we should have it. Because it's way past time. Before Ruben leaves this earth, I want to make sure that there is a Broadway theater that's owned by Black people. I think it's doable. I think it's time, way past time. And then once we figure out, let's pass it on to our Latinx brothers and sisters and our Native American, our Indian, and our whatever. Like, let's just start figuring this thing out, because it's just been happening like this for hundreds of years, and we're tired.
And I give you that charge.
Tired.
Yeah, but you've been tired before. I'm just saying.
I'm
The seed,
tired.
the seed is planted. Yeah, So we'll talk about that one later. Yeah, but I think you're right, and I think that so many times, there is not a monolithic voice. We're not all the same, and so we all have different feelings and different thoughts, and people will turn to. I'm in a group with 10 white people and 3 Black people, and they might turn to me and say, well, what do the Black people think? I'm like, I can tell you what I think.
I can't tell you what a whole race of people thinks, because I'm one woman. Hello?
Right? And yet
I know I'm every woman, but I'm not.
And yet at the same time, I know that my Black brothers and sisters feel like we need to be unified in our front when we go to, and yet we are different people. So how can you be unified except in your purpose, or
Yeah,
your
and
goal?
it's about trust, and it's about everybody being seen, heard, and affirmed. I just keep saying that because it's so true. So many people have not been given the opportunity to speak and to be heard. And when there's certain people who feel like these are the people who always get to speak, these are the people who always are in the rooms. And when people feel like they haven't been heard, it's like I can't even trust that the people are in the room speaking for me. They don't know my experience. They don't know what I've been through. So it all comes back to communication. It's like if we as a people, it's just us, can come sit down and talk to each other, you feel more safe being like, okay, I may not be in that room, but I know who is in that room, and I know they've heard me, and I know they understand me, and I know they can speak on my behalf, because not everyone can be in all the rooms at the same time. It's just impossible.
Right.
But there is a need for us to come together and just talk to each other and share and listen and learn and put self away and start listening to, it's so much of like, well, that's not my experience. And it's like, but it's not about you. It's about us. That may not be your experience, but if that's your sister's experience, then it is yours. If your brother is hungry, so are you.
Exactly.
So I think it's about more listening, more communicating, and that will lead to like the change that we need to see. It's so simple.
Yes, so simple. So when this simple thing happens, and I think Broadway is canceled, postponed until next March. So March, and in March, will you go back to the project that you were working on, or that was upcoming, or?
So I was attached to 2 projects that were about to like go out of town to come back to Broadway. I've already heard that they've both been pushed to fall of 2021, which is over a year from now. So I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I'm grateful that I know several projects that have been canceled. That it's like, actually, we're not doing this anymore. Both of my projects, I'm so glad they were really good and had great support systems. And the producers are like, no, this is going to happen. It's not happening right now, but we are committed. I know one of the theaters, like the upcoming season, like they canceled 2 of those shows and our show is still going to happen. So I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be in a drive-in movie theater. I don't know where. But at some point something will happen. That's literally all I can say. It's so unfortunate that I don't know. I don't know if fall is really a thing. It might get pushed to 2022. I have no idea. But at this point, everything I was attached to is still moving. So that's a blessing in and of itself.
That is a blessing. I know Tom Hanks, I read someplace this morning that Tom Hanks was so disappointed that his newest movie is being released online as opposed to in the movie theaters. And I think that, I wonder if a lot of things are going to happen online now. There's all these new, virtual contracts for plays that,
It's weird because like both of the shows that I was attached to, I was like the love interest or like, and I was like, both shows required a level of intimacy. Like there's one of the shows I was attached to is involves an African folktale, and it's like when she gets kissed by the man, the spell happens, and I'm like, he can't even kiss me. We can't even do that. It's like we can't hug, we can't touch. So certain things, I'm just excited and interested to see how things are going to translate. With musicals, you can't do a musical on Zoom. Like you have to pre-record because 2 people can't sing together at the same time because of the bandwidth. So it's like, are we gonna be in the same theater? Like we're gonna go to the theater, we're just gonna record it? Is it all on Zoom? Like who knows what musicals are about to be and do? Like it's kind of heartbreaking because I've been fortunate enough to know what it feels like to be in a Broadway house that's completely full, and the feeling and I will never forget first night of Hamilton in Los Angeles. I felt like Justin Bieber. Like I think that theater sat close to 3,000, I believe.
Ooh.
And the sheer volume, people screamed. We had the hallway, we couldn't even do the thing because the people were screaming. And I will never forget, the opening number ends, Alexander Hamilton, boom. And I was like, this is what Justin Bieber feels like every night. I have never felt the sheer volume and power of that many people screaming at us. And I was like, wow, will we ever be able to feel that again? Like, who knows? Maybe it'll be behind a bulletproof glass. I don't know. It's very interesting reading articles and seeing that theaters are like, removing seats or thinking about building. It looks like a bank teller. Like you just got the plexiglass. Who knows what theaters are going to look like and what that means financially, because that means there's not as many seats, there won't be as much money, the tickets can't be as high as they used to be. So like the whole Broadway as a business, theater as a business, it's all going to change. It all has to. So who knows?
I think there's only one theater here that I know of that never stopped production, and they went from inside, took a 2-month break, and went outside. So they started doing outside theater, and I always question, because of course singers, people in choirs and such, are the ones that tend to get, they're singing, there's particles coming out, there's and yet they're the only, and I won't even mention that, but they're the only company I know that, as everybody else went, no, let's kind of shut down, let's do our thing. But,
Brenda Porter, my goodness.
I know. So yeah, I think it will be different, and who knows what. So speaking of difference, New York versus Atlanta, because a lot of people, when I first came to Atlanta, it was thought of as the place to transition. People come to Atlanta to transition to New York. They come to Atlanta to transition to LA or to Chicago. And now Atlanta, in some ways, has become a destination because of all the film that has been brought here. So Atlanta versus New York, in terms of style, professionalism, what does that mean?
Okay. The biggest difference is money. Let's just be honest. The budgets are way bigger, but to me, the only thing that changed for me was the zip code. I'm the same person I was when I was here. I'm gonna speak personally first. I'm the same person. My hustle has always been hard. I've always just, I've never rested on my laurels. I can say that, like, when I got here to Atlanta, 2008, it was in a very, like, weird but wonderful time for me. There weren't a lot of women between 18 and 35 who sang, which was great for me. It's like, if anybody was in a musical, I was in it. I was left. So Atlanta is smaller in size. There's just not that many people. New York, everybody wants to be an actor. But I say it like this. I made it all the way to Broadway. My first Broadway show, my director had never directed anything before in his life.
On Broadway?
He had never directed anything ever, and he was directing on Broadway because he was a rich Jewish man who wrote it and produced it. And he was at a bar with his producing friends, and they were like, you should direct it. And he was like, okay. So when you talk about professionalism, my Broadway debut was with a man who had never directed anything, not a cat fashion show, not anything. So I remember one of the first days, one of the first scenes, he was trying to direct me and my co-star to have an intimate moment. He was like, okay, so you walk up to him and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you rub his face, 2, 3, 4, and I was like, and I took a 5. We weren't on a 5, but I took one. And I never forget, my co-star was like chasing me down the hallway, and I was like, what is this? So some people, that's why I say it's just the zip code, because depending on where you are, the opportunities are on completely different sides of the spectrum. Like, that was my first show. And now my second was George C. Wolfe and Audra McDonald and Savion Glover and Brian Stokes Mitchell and Billy Paul. So that was a complete flip, a complete 180. So the opportunities, I think what I appreciate most about New York is that the opportunities literally lead you to the next one and the next one that are always bigger. Like, I felt like when I lived in Atlanta, things moved in a circle. Like, I worked at Alliance, and then I worked Aurora, and then True Colors, and then Horizon, and I just kept going like this, but I felt like I never went this way. And I think I still get booked off people who saw Soul Doctor in 2013. And one opportunity literally leads to the next, that it puts you in different places. I think that's the different thing about between Atlanta and New York, paychecks. Like, I'll never forget my first New York contract. It was the perks. There were things that I didn't even know existed. Like, my agent, I remember, first Broadway contract, my earring, don't need it. We're working out perks, and he's like, okay, so what's your thing? Are you a yoga person? Are you a Pilates person? I was like, oh, I work out. He's like, okay, great. So how much does that cost you a week? And I was like, so-and-so. He's like, okay, great. So we'll get you $500 a week for yoga. And I was like, what? And then he was like, okay, voice lessons. We want voice lessons. You don't even have to say you take them, but we'll get you money for voice lessons. You want chiropractor? You got tight shoulder? We'll get you money for. And I was like, what is this? They pay you to be able to do your job? How crazy. So there were just certain things that I just didn't even know existed, but they made so much sense to me. It's like, if we are investing this much money in you, and you are the face of our production, we want to make sure you have everything you need to do your job well. So yes, there's a salary, but then there's voice lessons. We'll give you acting lessons. We'll give you money for chiropractor. If you survive off of Pilates, we'll pay for all your Pilates. I just didn't know that was a thing. So there's certain things that I'm like, I love Atlanta. Like, anybody who knows me, I love Atlanta. And not many people love New York. Most actors are in New York because of Broadway. We don't really want to be there. It's cold, it's lonely, you can't drive, it's hard. But I knew that in order for me to be able to realize some of my dreams and just put myself in a place where the opportunities were more luscious, that I had to go to Broadway. I don't think I will always be in New York. I always say I don't want to have a stroller on the A train. Like, I just don't want to raise my child there. Who knows? Will I end up in LA? Will I end up in Atlanta? I'm not sure. But Broadway helped me. I think Broadway made me more ferocious because there's just so much more competition. Like, in Atlanta, even in New York, it's the same 12 or the same 16. Right. I know who the girls are who are with me, but they push me a little harder than I was pushed in Atlanta, just because there are more of them. But we all feel that push. The older we get, there's always somebody young coming up under you, and you like, oh, well, who are you? So that is universal. But mostly the biggest difference between New York and Atlanta is the opportunities, the money, and the way that certain awards are tied to certain opportunities. Like, New York, pretty much, you get a Tony nomination, you get a TV show. In some way, shape, fashion, or form. You get a Tony nomination that opens up doors for you to move on to Hollywood if that's a dream of yours, or TV. But at the core, it's the same. The air is the same. Groceries still cost. Gas is still high. But I've been living in New York 8 years now, which is insane to me. And I'm home quarantined with my parents right now. I miss it a little. But I'm glad that I moved to New York. I'm glad for what it has done for my life and my career and the opportunities it's given me to do other things. I don't think I would have written a Steve and started writing other things or co-founded organizations. I don't think those things would have happened if I stayed in Atlanta. So I'm just glad that it was a goal and I set out to do it, and I won't have to look back in 10 years and say, what if? Because I did it. I followed through. And that's hard. So I'm grateful for all of the things that Broadway has given me and not given me. It's made me a better person, I think.
Now, on Broadway or off Broadway, on the stage, we know we see Black faces. We know that Black faces and Black voices sell. What about behind the scenes? Do you see a lot of lighting designers, set designers, costumers that are people of color?
So the other organization I co-founded, Black Women on Broadway, Essence has this brunch every year called the Essence Black Women Hollywood Brunch. And it's been going on for 13 years. And I was like, oh, I know they're going to do a Broadway one. They never did. It's fine. So a couple girlfriends and I, we took it upon ourselves to start planning one for ourselves. Let's get a sponsor. Let's do it. And one of my first tasks in planning the brunch was putting together a guest list. And I wanted to make sure we had artists, actors, but also designers, dressers, PR people, management. And in assembling that list, I was like, wow, I don't know nobody who does any of these things that's Black. And the great part about building this organization is having to do the research and finding out that they exist. Have I met, seen, worked with most of them? No. I know that, I just think about shows I've done, Shuffle Along, like walking into the theater, and we always circle up on the Broadway stage the first day and do a whole moment to like bring a new Broadway show into a Broadway theater. It's a beautiful moment, but it's the moment that you do get to look around and see there's one Black dresser, there's one Black sound engineer, there may be one Black person in front of house. It's the same problem that Atlanta has, and it's not that they don't exist. I can name you a million Black musical theater composers, playwrights. It's the opportunities. They're out here. They just don't have the opportunity to work. So it's like I see it. I see that they exist, but do I see them working? Not so much, which I hope is something that the pandemic helps us fix. Because they're out here. We aren't in positions to greenlight, which is what we need to be. We're not in the producing, casting, directing situation. Theater owners, those four, mostly white. So if we could get more faces of color, more Black people in those top-down positions, that they're making decisions and they're greenlighting, I think we would see things start magically becoming more colorful.
That would be nice. You know, that would be very nice. Now, you also mentioned that you were here in Atlanta with your parents, and I know that you have theater and film royalty in your family.
Oh, Lord.
So your mother is an actor in a film, an actor in theater and in film. And how much has she influenced you in your development as an artist, and how much did she, I know she's extremely proud of you. How much did she encourage you? How much did she try to discourage you?
I feel like I'll never know all the way she influenced me. Like, I feel like most of it probably is subconsciously from all the years growing up, sitting in rehearsal halls and being on sets with her. I feel like it's just probably like the way my brain operates because of all of that I can't like make an itemized list, but I know I'm an actor because she's an actress. Like, so just from that, I feel like she never, I like to say she didn't discourage me, but she didn't encourage.
I'm gonna talk to Margot Moore.
No. She wanted me to make money, which any parent, you want your child to make money. So what she did, which is very smart, is from childhood, I was always in acting camps and music and dance, but then she also put me in like math and science camp. So it was like, where if you go left or you go right, you've got a foundation in either one. And I know she wanted me to be like an actuary or architect or something fancy. My dad wanted me to be the first Major League Baseball pitcher, female. God bless him. He wanted a son, clearly. But I think that was very smart of her, that she knew that whenever I got to the point where I made the decision, I would have the foundation for any of it. So if I decided I did want to be an actor, I've been taking classes since I was a kid. If I went into science and math, I've been in every science and math camp possible. So I think that was very smart of her. I'm sure she always wanted to nudge me more towards the money, but she said that I did Once on This Island when I was 11, 12 with Clark Atlanta University. Carol Mitchell Leon was the director, and she said she and my dad were coming to see like the first night, and they would know based on my performance in this show whether I had it or I didn't. And I think she says like 30 seconds in, she was like, "Ah, hell." So, but glad that she recognized it, because then she knew which direction that I was going to take, which affected everything, you know, what school I chose going to Howard and what classes and courses I took. So I'm sure she's had a huge impact and influence, that I never will fully know how much she did, or things that I didn't realize she was doing that, you know, helped to maneuver me on my way. But she's never been discouraging, or never been like, I think we have an understanding, you know, two artists, giving space, like not being very like, let me give you all these notes, letting me figure things out on my own and find my own way, I think was very smart of her. I'm also an only child, so I don't have any other siblings to balance or bounce things off of. So I always feel like I had space and room to do me. And I mean, here I am now. I turned out okay, so I think she did pretty good. You know, I think I'm all right.
Wonderful. So our hour is almost up. Is there any thing that we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about, or any words of advice that you'd like to give to anybody? Up and
Like
coming.
we did talk about all the things. I mean, I feel like I should say, like, thank you, Brenda Porter, you know, from way back when at Atlanta Street Theater, when I used to wear the shirt as a dress because it was so long. You know, not only, you know, did you teach me, and then when I got old and came back, you know, summers from high school and college, and then started working at Atlanta Street Theater, which was full circle, like.
As a teacher and a director, which you were very good at.
Thank you. But you know, you've been instrumental in my tutelage and my, you know, growth and development. And I'm sure, you know, Atlanta Street Theater was so inspirational, and just when I think back to, sometimes I don't always think about like Donald Griffin and Carol Mitchell Leon and Brenda Porter, like, were my teachers. Like some of the best artists, not in Atlanta, just the best artists ever. How fortunate I was to learn from you guys at such a young age, planted the seeds. You know, when I teach workshops now, I still use exercises and things I learned from Atlanta Street Theater. You know, that stuff is stuck with me. So I'm grateful, you know, that you guys were a part of my life and helping me, you know, get to Broadway and making it, or whatever you call it. But if there's anything we didn't cover, I think it's that. So I just want to say thanks.
Well, thank you. You know, I love you with all my heart, girl. And I'm always very proud of you, and then very happy, and can't wait to see Steve, because I have not seen it. So I can't wait to
I will
see
send
it.
that. I got you.
Oh, okay, we got it. So thank you for being our first guest on the couch, and I hope that you will come back at some point and visit us again and talk to us more.
Maybe next time we can like be on the same couch in the same place.
Wouldn't that be nice? Take care, my sister.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you. Bye.